January 3rd, 1924, British archaeologist Howard Carter finds the mummy of Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, better known as King Tut. But who was Howard Carter? And who was King Tut? Also, why was the discovery of his tomb so significant? Carter was born in London, but he spent much of his childhood in Swaffham, a small village in Norfolk. He was a sickly child with limited formal education, but he often visited the Amherst mansion near his home. It was filled with ancient artifacts, which sparked his interest in ancient Egypt. At age 17, in 1891, Lady Amherst sent him to Egypt to assist an archaeologist friend of hers. 23 years later, in 1914, thanks to financial backing from British aristocrat Lord Carnarvon, Carter begins excavations in the Valley of the Kings near Luxor. 8 years later, in November 1922, he finds King Tut's tomb. Carter and Carnarvon are the first to enter the tomb on November 26, 1922. Carter then begins a careful, years-long excavation. The discovery is remarkable because it remains the only tomb of an Egyptian pharaoh that survives intact to the modern day. Most pharaohs' tombs, in fact, were looted soon after first being sealed thousands of years ago. A little over a year after discovering the tomb, Carter and his workmen uncover a stone sarcophagus. Inside are 3 progressively smaller coffins. The innermost contains the 3,000-year-old mummy of King Tutankhamun, along with his spectacular, iconic gold death mask. Tutankhamun was a relatively insignificant pharaoh during his lifetime. He ascended to the throne of Egypt as a child when he was just 8 or 9 years old in 1332 BC, and ruled for only 9 years. The only significant achievement of his reign was the restoration of the cult of Amun-Ra, returning Egypt to polytheism after the controversial and unpopular religious reforms of his father Akhenaten, who had elevated the minor god Aten to the role of supreme and only god. Tutankhamun's death is shrouded in mystery. For decades after the discovery of his tomb, many experts believed he had been murdered, but most now agree that is unlikely. Some today believe that an unhealed kneecap injury could indicate that he was mortally injured in a chariot accident. Another prominent theory is that he died of malaria. Regardless of the cause, many believe that Tut's likely unexpected death at such a young age is the main reason his tomb survived intact. Pharaohs' tombs were often elaborately constructed over a period of many years, making efforts to keep them secret almost impossible. But Tutankhamun's tomb was almost certainly prepared hastily. There is evidence, in fact, that his tomb may have been originally intended for another individual and was modified quickly to house the pharaoh. Compared to other royal tombs, King Tut's tomb was quite small. Despite this, however, it was loaded with all types of treasure. It included the aforementioned mummy, gold jewelry, chariots, statues, weapons, and clothing. In effect, everything that he would need for his afterlife. Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb has elevated the otherwise unremarkable pharaoh to a status of great prominence. Many artifacts from King Tut's tomb went across the world in a traveling exhibition known as the Treasures of Tutankhamun from 1972 to 1981. It drew huge crowds and led the boy pharaoh to become an international celebrity more than 3,000 years after his death. Tut's newfound celebrity status was perhaps best exemplified by Steve Martin in a famous performance of his song King Tut on Saturday Night Live in 1978, where listeners surprisingly learned that the pharaoh was born in Arizona but moved to Babylonia and had a condo made of stona. Tut also apparently ate a crocodile and gave his life for tourism. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1087, Japanese Emperor Shirakawa abdicates, then begins indirect rule through a cloister government. In 1521, Pope Leo X excommunicates German monk Martin Luther, the catalyst of the Protestant Reformation. In 1925, fascist leader Benito Mussolini declares his right to supreme power before Italy's parliament. In 1973, a 12-member group led by George Steinbrenner purchases the New York Yankees for $10 million. In 1990, Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega surrenders to the U.S. to face drug trafficking charges. In 2004, NASA's Spirit rover lands on Mars, beginning 7 years of exploration of the planet's surface. In 2020, a targeted U.S. drone strike kills 62-year-old Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Iraq. And now, it's time for our Today in History quiz. Who devised Germany's primary military strategy to avoid a two-front war that was implemented at the start of World War I? Alfred von Schlieffen, Otto von Bismarck, Paul von Hindenburg, or Helmut von Moltke? Liked learning about King Tut's tomb? Then you'll love this one about how U.S. President John F. Kennedy helped save some of ancient Egypt's treasures from destruction. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.